My first guest is Andrea Putting. And Andrea, the lovely lady, has been a previous guest on Talking with the Experts podcast. And she's going to be talking today with you about compassionate prosperity. Now, a little bit about Andrea. It's always hard being first, Andrea, and I'm not. Andrea is an advocate for social mission. She highlights the successes for those making a difference in the world through her podcast, Social Mission Revolution. Through her award-winning books, Compassionate Prosperity When Success is Not Enough and Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfilment, speeches and programs, she guides businesses and individuals in building co-creative communities and adopting a social mission. Combining her passions, Andrea founded her own social missions, Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony, and Chocolate and Coffee Breaks, encouraging the breaking down of barriers by sharing in the simple pleasures of life. Andrea Putting lives in Melbourne, in Australia, amongst the gum trees. Oh, lovely her, with kangaroos and cockatoos with her husband and pet cockatoo fella. She has 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren who keep her jumping in puddles. She doesn't look that old. Andrea, welcome for joining me today, and I thank you for giving up your time. How let's talk about compassionate prosperity. What does that mean?
Compassionate prosperity is all about finding your prosperity through being compassionate. So when we join those two things together, we find a way of life that allows everyone to prosper. So it's not just about a business prospering, it's about the whole community prospering, the employees, the community, society in general, the earth. So it creates this win-win-win-win situation where we can all join in together.
Absolutely, and that's what we all want in life, is the win-win-win situation. So how can business owners, take ownership of that?
So it's a process, as everything is. It's when you get to being successful in business, there is often this point where you go, there must be more. And I've had people like that on my podcast and that I've written about, put it in my book, and there goes my book again. So in Compassionate Prosperity, I talk about people's stories who have been exactly that. For example, one of my guests that I speak about in chapter 4 is Ian Ergate. Now, he was a successful property developer, and he had success after success, and he got to this point in his life, he goes, well, what else is there? What more is there? He figured he'd done it all. And so his life actually took a dive personally and emotionally, to the point he was in depression and was even considering suicide. Now, that's pretty tragic. It's like we've got to this point in our lives, we've created so much success. What else is there? Well, there's always more. And because he had compassionate, loving people around him who could see what was going on, because he was not the sparkly, joyful person that he used to be, they intervened with him, and he was able to find that by changing the model of his business to be compassionate and to put other people first, it gave him a new sense of purpose in life. And so it was no longer about him making money and getting to the highest success level. It was now about, how can I help people in my community by doing what I do? So his whole business model changed from building and developing large properties to looking at how we could develop properties that would serve the need in the community, which was small housing for individuals or couples who couldn't afford the normal 4-bedroom home, which is impractical anyway. So now his whole model is based around these two questions he asked everything. Is it good for the community and fulfill a need? And does it make money? So the make money comes second. If it's just about making money, he doesn't do it. If it doesn't help the community, he doesn't do it. So it completely changes the way people look about that. And through that, it just changes the whole relationships that he has with employees, with suppliers, services, and everything else. Everything switches to being, this is about more than success.
Mm. Yeah, I think business owners can take, compassionate prosperity to a whole new level, because I think, more compassion is needed in the world anyway. I think that we as a society have become less compassionate, and I think we need to find, some more compassion, more overall inclusion. I think with the way the world is at the moment, I think those things are really, really important.
They are. And there is so many needs in the community. There are so many needs in the world. And to solve those problems, it takes us stepping up and saying, okay, we're going to do something this. And I think business is in the perfect position to do that. But it takes switching your perspective. It takes putting your perspective into how does it help the community? How does what I do make that ongoing difference?
Mm.
How can I be an authentic influence in this world, in this issue? So it's a different way of thinking, rather than just thinking about the bottom line financially.
Mm.
The bottom line needs to be about your employee engagement, your how does it help the community? Is everyone living a fulfilled life who has something to do with this business? So yeah, there's a lot around.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think that, whether you're in business or you're not, I think you need to find something that's more fulfilling in your life than, just working. You're supposed to, enjoy life. And if you can find compassion in any area, I mean, it doesn't really matter. And compassion doesn't mean that you feel sorry for people. It just means that you understand and can I don't know, empathy and compassion are two different things. However, I guess compassion just means that you're a bit of a softer person. It doesn't mean that you're soft, just that you deal with things in a softer way.
Yes, I find compassion to me is about sharing what we have. It's about action. It's empathy in action. Let's put it that way. I've just created something new for me to talk about.
That's it. Write that down.
Yeah. So sympathy is not where we want to be. Oh, you poor thing, I feel so sorry for you. You must have it so hard. We don't need that. We need empathy in action. Empathy is more about feeling into how people are feeling, being in that same space with them. It doesn't mean taking yourself down and getting yourself into depression, but working on understanding how it is that they feel. And rather than saying, oh, I know how you feel, when you really don't. It's like, explain to me how you feel. What is it that you're going through? And really listening with your heart. And then compassion, we're going to be acting on it. We're going to find ways to help people. And we have to be careful with that too. because we don't want to make people dependent on us. And back to my book, you see, I wrote all this in my book. One of my last chapters is actually about my cockatoo, and using that as an example of what we don't want to be creating with people. We don't want to be creating that image of he's in a cage and completely dependent on us because we found him as a baby and we brought him home and he never learnt to really fly or fend for himself in the wild, which is completely different to what you do today. But fella is almost 50, so in the 70s we didn't do, you just brought them home as a chick who fell out of the nest and that was it, that's his life. Whereas now we get them out in the wild again. But his whole life is dependent on this, and he gets out of his cage and he'll wander back into his cage. We don't want to do that with people and with our charitable heart when we're giving to people. We don't want to create the situation where they're dependent on us, but we want to set them free so that that's good for them, good for us, because it means we can help someone else. So that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind when we're giving, when we're deciding where we're going to give our charitable money to, where we're going to give our time to. How can we set them free? How can we empower them with compassion?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, the softer approach is, I don't know, it doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you are dealing with things in a different way. And I like how you said that compassion, what was it? Compassion
is empathy in action.
Yes, and I really liked that. It's what it is. It's a way of showing others that you care about them.
Yes. Yes, and that's a really important thing in business, is that a business is showing the community, showing their clientele or their consumers that they do have compassion, that they do care about the community. Besides anything else, the statistics show that I think it's 80%. I'd have to go back and check the exact number, but people will choose to purchase a product which, from a business that is giving, or whether it's time, money, or otherwise, to compassionate purposes. They will choose that over any other business every time. Well, 8%, but most of them will. And especially if you keep the price comparable. There's one example that I had used on one of my podcasts was, it's also in the book, when I was talking to Steve Price, who's very involved in B1G1. He used the example of, hey, if there's two coffee shops, one of them, they sell the same coffee, they both they both sell really good coffee at the same price.
Yeah.
Now this one over here, they give an amount from every cup of coffee to help children in a developing country have water for the day. Every cup of coffee gives a child water for a day or for a week, whatever it is. This other coffee shop, it doesn't. It sells coffee, just as good, same price. Now, who are you going to buy from? And when he asks this question in a room, everyone will say, we want to buy it from the coffee shop that gives money to help children have water in developing countries. Occasionally somebody will say, I'm going to go to the other one because that one's crowded. The majority of people, they want to go, they want to help. And it's kind of like a no-brainer. So if you're in business, what are you going to do? If you think about that. However, there's always, I keep coming up with howevers. If you do that just for the sake of getting customers, for making it look good, it doesn't quite work because it has to come from here.
Yeah.
So it's a really important thing to come from that space, because also the employees need to feel that too. Because when employees feel it, then the business is going to grow as well, because they are going to be more engaged in what they do, because they know that what they do makes a difference.
Mm.
So one of the people I spoke to on my podcast, which is also in the book,
Yeah.
is Shelley Galvin, and she works for a big company in the US. It's called CPT Nuggets.
Yeah.
And she's employed just as to take care of their social mission. So there's lots of things I can talk about with what she does. But one of the things that she finds is that people are very connected with the work that she's doing that allows the company to be giving and sharing on a large scale, so that they're more engaged. They ask her regularly, they want to know all the time where their efforts in the business is going. Who are we helping? Tell us about that. And that helps them to stay engaged in what they do. It keeps them enthusiastic about their everyday roles. And then they also have days where they all volunteer at one of the organisations they're happening, and they all just go out and get down and dirty and do whatever they have to do. But it fills their souls, it fills their work life, and they go home happier people, because what they're doing every single day makes a difference. So
yes, and we need to make a difference every single day. I mean, that's why we're here. We're not, it's not rocket science to make people feel comfortable, to have a bit of a conversation with them, to find out how their day was. And as a CEO, especially of larger businesses, it doesn't hurt you to go down onto the floor and actually talk to the people that are working there, to find out how their day was, and bring about some sort of get to know you, some show the compassion, rather than just saying how was your day and not really caring. Go and have a conversation with the floor staff, because they're the ones who know the job. They know how things operate. And if you, as the CEO, owner, whatever, don't go and talk to the people, your team members, how in the hell are you going to know what's going on?
Yeah, and that's a really important thing, which is what I talked about in a previous book. So it is a really important thing that CEOs and business owners connect in with their employees, so that they feel like they're not just going there working and nothing, what they think and say doesn't matter. When they're listened to, when they feel like their employee cares about what they have to say, then they're going to be more open in sharing their ideas or what's wrong, because they know what's wrong with the business in their area. They know the ideas, but if they get shut down, or the business owner or the CEO isn't interested in listening to them, then what are you missing out on? Your employees get more disengaged, which the numbers for disengagement is around 80%, so it's horrendous. So there's only a few people who are really interested in going to work. So, but when you can listen to what they have to say and connect with them on a deeper level, then your business has the opportunity to grow. You have those opportunities, you get greater productivity, more innovation, and from those two things comes a greater profit. So it all makes sense. It's just a case of acknowledging that and making sure that when you do this, you're not thinking about the profit, the productivity, the innovation. You're thinking about your people and caring deeply for them. And it takes an effort. I know, especially in a big company, it would be really hard to get that connection, one-on-one connection with people. So the way of doing that is just to, well, if each manager takes time with their people, then that makes it easier. And then you can still, get down on the floor with them, and sound like I'm talking to the grandchildren, get down on the floor with them. But you know what I mean, is to go into their workspaces and just sit and talk to them, and don't make them feel like you're looking over their shoulder, but hey, how are you going? What's happening in your life? How can I help you in your everyday? That kind of
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think enough business owners or CEOs or even CFOs and COOs, they don't go down to the floor and talk to the people. The people are, if you don't have the people on the floor, you don't have a business, basically. No. And so if you don't treat them with respect and compassion, and get to know, you don't have to be buddies with them, but at least go there and have a conversation, even if it's only once a week. Just spend a few minutes just talking to them, because if there's anything that's going on that you may not be aware of, they're the ones that are going to be able to tell you.
Yeah. And if they don't have that relationship with you, or feel like they're not allowed to have that relationship with you for any reason, they're not going to share it.
No.
They'll just go home and bitch.
Absolutely. And, quite honestly, I don't know that, it's not good for business. And if your staff aren't happy, then your profits go down, basically, because you're not getting the productivity from them that is needed to foster those profits.
That's right. So employee engagement is an incredibly important thing. And that's how the whole thing for me, where I've got to with the whole concept of social mission revolution, actually came from me exploring that. It was, well, how do people go to work and feel content in their work and come home and feel like they've had a good day, not come home feeling exhausted because they've just drained every ounce out of them, but come home and feeling like, and they want to talk to their family about how good their day is and what they've done and what they've achieved and how many people they've helped today because they've embraced compassionate prosperity. That's a whole new game. And how does that affect your family life? And how does that affect the way that your children grow up? And society in the future really depends on how your parents come home from work every day, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if your parents come home crabby and not engaged, really, and they, still thinking about work when they get through the front door, then they're not going to engage with the children because they're tired, they're exhausted.
Yeah. And this is something that was found, I can't remember her name now. She was Australian Senior of the Year a few years ago, and she was a child psychologist. And that was what she found, was that more and more children were suffering from depression. And what she could see was exactly that, was parents were coming home exhausted. They didn't have the time or energy just to sit with their children. And instead they would spend money on them or give them computer games or something to keep them occupied. So it's the facts are out there. The figures are there.
They are, absolutely.
This is really an important thing for us to be considering and focusing on. So, while I talk about in incorporating a social mission in your business, the effects of that are incredible, that just flow on, not just for your profit, for the way your business is seen in the world, but it has that ongoing effect right down to the way children are brought up and what are they going to be in the future.
Now let's talk about self-compassion. Because
That's an
honestly,
interesting topic.
Sorry?
That's an interesting topic, isn't it?
It is. Most of us, I would say, don't show enough self-compassion. We're too hard on ourselves. We use so much negative self-talk. It's a lot of that's been from, how we've been brought up. We're never good enough. Stuff is always going on. How can we, as business owners, as individuals, show ourselves more self-compassion?
Yeah, it's a big topic, isn't it? Self-compassion is vital, and I know I've been through this, and I've got a friend going through similar things. My health deteriorated over a couple of years, and suddenly I was left feeling I had absolutely no energy and could not do anything. Beginning of last year, I had to take 2 months off completely doing anything, and then I had to go very slowly. And now I'm kind of feeling like, oh, maybe I'm doing too much again. I have to slow down. If we don't take that compassion with ourselves and recognize who we are and what we need, our health suffers. And I see it all around me. And so finding that time to check in with what is it that I need to do to look after myself. What really interesting comes to mind right now is there is a scripture that a lot of people kind of miss the meaning of, because I grew up in a Christian environment, and I still live in that. And I find a lot of people from, especially my mother's era and even some of mine, they think that they can't think about themselves. They put themselves last. They don't. So and they really think down on themselves. A lot of people really think down on themselves. But coming back to the scripture is love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you don't love yourself, and treating yourself badly, is that how you're going to treat your neighbor? I mean, people will spout that and say that, but they're not thinking, hey, hang on a minute. How am I loving myself? Is that how I want to love my neighbor? No, it's not.
It's a good point, Andrea. Yeah. I mean, regardless of whether you are a religious person or not, that is a very, very good piece of advice, is to, love yourself like you love your neighbour. So, I mean, you love, your family members most often times more than you love yourself. And so, you can't be loved unless you can love yourself. And so you need to work on that. You need to find ways that everyone's got good points, and if you repeat them to yourself enough times, your subconscious will listen and take note, and you will start to love yourself. It doesn't matter.
You don't want to be saying to yourself, oh, you're stupid. No. What'd you do that for? And talking down at yourself. If you talked like that, or if I talk like that to my grandchildren, that would be abuse. So why would I be abusing myself? So when I'm at my best, when I can nourish and nurture myself, then I have energy to give to my grandchildren, to my community. If I'm not looking after myself, I can't do that. And that's been a real big lesson for me in the past couple of years, is that I became depleted because I wasn't looking after myself. And that meant that I wasn't able to care for children. I wasn't able to do the volunteer work that I wanted to do. And well, my work completely, I just had to stop everything. So it was a difficult time, but a big, big lesson that unless we do that, we can't help. It's that old thing of put the oxygen mask on yourself first. If you're
That's
not
it.
breathing, you can't help somebody else breathe. But if everyone's need for that is different, and so we need to explore what it is for you. One of my teachers would talk very strongly about taking a holy day, and she didn't mean you go off to church or you do, it doesn't even have to be a spiritual day, but you take a holy day for yourself on a regular basis, which means you turn off whatever it is that you normally do every day and do the day something that nourishes and nurtures yourself. And that might be you go out and do something with your family or your friends, but it has to be completely different to what you do. You don't, if you normally sit in front of the computer, do not turn the computer on. Just go for a walk, go and sit in nature, read a book, whatever it is that you need to do to nurture you, you need to do that. And if you can't take a whole day, you take half a day, even a couple of hours of just me time. Schedule it in and just take the time off and care for yourself.
Yeah, you've got to show yourself compassion before you can, really, you've got to fill your own cup before you can fill others, I think.
Yeah.
Because you can't, you just, I mean, it's an often said analogy, but it's true. If your cup is not full, you can't, you'll deplete yourself, you'll wear yourself out if you're trying to fill other people's cups if yours is empty. So, really take the time. I mean, it's go and smell the roses, go and just go and put your feet in the grass and just walk, even if you have to walk around the backyard. It doesn't really matter. Even 5 minutes is better than no time at all. Go and nourish yourself, as you said. You need to nourish your soul, your mind, your body, because you just can't keep going and pushing, and you really have to show yourself that self-compassion, because it's so important for you to be able to be with others and share whatever it is you want to share, if you're feeling good about yourself.
Yes. I think if you so people who can, when you can be compassionate to yourself, then you feel more alive and can be more compassionate to other people. But it is a cycle. It's a circle, because one of the things that does nourish you, certainly nourishes me, is when I'm helping other people. So the compassion kind of comes both ways. But we've got to come from that right place. Yes, we need to fill our cup. We need to make sure that we've got the energy, we've nourished ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. When we get out of our own space and help somebody else, then it comes back to us as well. And that's something that I have found in my own life, and when I've spoken to other people, that showing other people compassion, finding that speaks to our hearts, and going out and, I talk a lot about volunteering as an example, finding that volunteering gig that makes you feel like you're making a difference in the way that you are made to make a difference, it can take you out of depression. And so one of the things to get out of depression is to be starting to think about other people and how you can help and make a difference. So it fills you up, but you also need to take that time and recognize where your limits are of how much time and energy you can give, and to be giving to others but then to step back and say, today I'm giving to myself.
Yeah, it's not selfish. It isn't selfish to give to yourself. When we were little, a lot of us were told that it was selfish to do stuff for ourselves, and but it isn't. It certainly isn't, because if as we've discussed, it's you have to feel good about yourself before you can help others feel good about themselves, because it's just goes hand in hand, really. If you're feeling crappy about yourself, it shows, and people people can see it, they can sense it, they can feel it. So especially if they're empathic, they will feel it more, and so you'll make that person feel really badly, and it's a perpetual cycle. So start cheering yourself up, and stop saying that you're stupid if you make a mistake. I mean, honestly, it's not the end of the world.
No. And then that goes all the way back into business as well. If people come in and they're not feeling good about themselves, if their work doesn't make them feel good about themselves, then that streams on to the productivity of the business, and the whole thing. It's all connected.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
It's just like this. It's here, there, everywhere, but it comes all back to living a compassionate, prosperous.
Absolutely. Andrea, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you if they want to work with you, or indeed even buy your books?
They can hop on over to my website, www.andreaputting.com.au, and there you can find my books. You can find links to my podcast and chocolate and coffee day, which we haven't even talked about. That's okay. We can find all those things.
We still have time. Please do. Please talk about the chocolate. Yes.
Chocolate and coffee day, which I now talk about chocolate and coffee breaks, because there's a whole other area of listening that we've already talked about that needs to be incorporated. So chocolate and coffee day started from the time when I was looking for what is it that I'm doing, and kind of took a detour. When so it's December the 15th, 2015, or 14, 2015. I'm getting my dates mixed up right now. When a gunman went into the Lindt Chocolate Cafe in Sydney and took people hostage. And what happened there was that 2 innocent people and the gunman all lost their lives. The gunman was a Muslim man. He walked in, he had his thing on, his banner on, saying that it was in the name of Allah, so he was saying, I'm doing this in the name of Allah, and wanted an ISIS flag. So at the end of it, it was really feared that people would take this out on the Muslim community, because that's what was happening around that time. So that they would blame Muslims. Muslims were afraid, they were taking off their religious garb, and then people go, no, don't do that. And somebody put on social media the hashtag I will ride with you, offering to ride the train, the bus, the ferry with people who were Muslims to ensure that they got to their destination safely. Before you knew it, there was 150,000 people plastering all over social media, I will ride with you. So instead of responding negatively and in hate and terror, we responded in love and peace. And so I thought about this for some time, and it was like, why do we wait until there's a tragedy before we speak up and say, we want to live in a world where there's love and peace and acceptance? And so that's when I started Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony, encouraging people to reach out to someone different to them and share a chocolate and a conversation with someone, because chocolate and coffee, it's this comfortable setting that everyone's comfortable in. And chocolate has all those delicious endorphin in it that open us up and allow us to be ready to have a conversation. And so I started that, and we've been doing that for 8 years now. And so I've broadened this into chocolate and coffee breaks, because it's not just religious harmony we want to talk about. There's all sorts of issues. And so there's lots of different issues in different communities where people are different and need to just sit and have a conversation with people, even in the workplace like we were talking before. It's like, who are you? Let's get to know each other, rather than just thinking that you're someone there and I have absolutely no connection with. I don't understand who you are, where you come from, and just keeping it at that level. Because when people interact on a personal level, they can work together a lot better. So whether it's community, whether it's group of people, workplace, there's always an opportunity for a chocolate and coffee break to stop and connect with people on a deeper level. Now, I've just spent a weekend at a camp, and we were talking about connection. And I thought, while I talk a lot about bringing in diversity and inclusion into community using chocolate and coffee as an opening, there's also opportunities within your everyday communities where you might know someone for a long time. And this is something that came up on the weekend, was that I've known this person all my life, but I've never sat and had this deep, intimate conversation with them to find out who they are on a really personal level. And so chocolate and coffee is just an opportunity to break down some of those. I have a whole lot of different activities are based around that to help people to connect and to build community wherever we are. So chocolate and coffee day is kind of my social mission, and a lot of that integrates into chocolate and coffee breaks now as well.
So how can people get hold of these chocolate and coffees?
Well, anyone can buy chocolate. We can get chocolate and coffee anywhere to start with. I'm not selling any chocolate and coffee. I'm not making any money on chocolate and coffee. So, yeah, they can find out more at chocolateandcoffeebreaks.com is the website that I have on that. And there's a whole lot of resources there that people can connect with and give them ideas on how to run a chocolate and coffee break, or they can come to me and I can go to different places to hold a chocolate and coffee break session for groups, communities, workplaces, whoever needs a chocolate and coffee break. Wherever there's a need for chocolate and coffee, I'll be there.
Oh, good. You can come to my house. I'm already in need of chocolate and coffee.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's sounding pretty good about now.
Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing compassionate prosperity with us all. It's been absolute delight. If you were to leave some words of wisdom to our audience today, what would that be?
My favorite words of wisdom are that if you touch one person's life, you change the world. So it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much energy you have, how much time you have. You can always touch one person's life. It can be in the simplest of ways. It can be a great grand scale, of course, but it can be in the simple things. So just remember that if you touch one person's life, you change the world.
Really sage advice. I love that, because it's the flow-on effect, isn't it? If you do one good deed, that person will do a good deed. It doesn't have to be immediate, but they will do a good deed for somebody else, and somebody else. It just follows on. And if we all did one good deed a day, I think the world would be a much, much happier place.
And if you think about it in a simpler term, if you do something good for one person, it changes their whole outlook on life. And then that changes the way they connect with other people. It changes their family relationships. So let's look at a bigger scale than just they go and do another good deed. Their life's changed.
Absolutely. It only takes a smile.
Yep, it does.
Andrea, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to talking to you again really, really soon.
Okay, thanks, Rose. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.